My husband cheated with boss in Penthouse. My revenge left cards blocked and future destroyed. I decided to surprise my husband with a gift after receiving his "I just got promoted" text. When I arrived at his office, one of his CO workers smirked, saying, "He's inside with the boss," thanking her for the promotion. I opened the door and found them kissing. Without a word, I left, blocked his cards, and changed the locks. Then something unexpected happened. I decided to surprise my husband with a gift after receiving his "I just got promoted" text. When I arrived at his office, one of his CO workers smirked, saying, "He's inside with the boss," thanking her for the promotion. I opened the door and found them kissing. Without a word, I left, blocked his cards, and changed the locks. Then something unexpected happened. For exactly 4 heartbeats, I stood in the doorway of that executive office, watching my husband of 7 years press Angela Davidson against the floor-to-ceiling windows with the kind of passion I thought was reserved only for me. But 12 hours earlier, none of this nightmare existed in my reality. Sunday morning had begun like every other for the past 7 years. Kenneth's bare feet padded across our cottage's hardwood floors, the familiar sound of coffee beans grinding in our kitchen, and the gentle creak of our bedroom door as he balanced my favorite ceramic mug, the one with tiny painted roses that I'd bought at the farmer's market during our 2nd year of marriage. "Morning, beautiful," he whispered, setting the steaming coffee on my nightstand. The hazelnut aroma filled our bedroom, mixing with the salt air drifting through our open windows overlooking Moonrise Bay. Kenneth slipped back under our handmade quilt, his warm body fitting Sray perfectly against mine. I nestled into his shoulder, breathing in his familiar scent of cedar soap and something uniquely him. "Did you remember to add the extra cream?" I murmured against his chest. "Just the way you like it," he said, his fingers tracing lazy circles on my back. "Light brown, not too sweet, with that little dash of cinnamon you pretend you don't want." This ritual had anchored our marriage through job changes, family deaths, financial stress, and countless ordinary Sundays that somehow felt extraordinary when shared. Kenneth knew exactly how I liked my coffee, just as I knew he preferred his eggs slightly runny and his toast barely golden. These small intimacies had built the foundation of what I believed was unshakable love. "I've been thinking about our cruise," I said, reaching for the Mediterranean brochures scattered across my nightstand. "What if we extended our stay in Santorini? I found this amazing cooking class where they teach traditional Greek recipes in a restored monastery." Kenneth's body tensed slightly against mine, so briefly I almost missed it. "Sounds expensive. Are you sure we can afford the extra time off?" "Kenneth, we've been saving for 2 years. Our accounts are healthier than they've ever been." I sat up, studying his face in the morning light. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his jaw carried the tension that had become increasingly common over the past few months. "You've been working so hard lately. You deserve this vacation more than anyone." He pulled me back down, kissing the top of my head. "You're right. I'm just stressed about this promotion decision. Angela Davidson has been evaluating my portfolio for weeks, and I keep second-guessing every project I've ever touched." Angela Davidson. Kenneth mentioned her name with increasing frequency, always accompanied by that same mixture of professional anxiety and something else I couldn't identify. Respect, maybe, or admiration that bordered on something more intense. "She'd be crazy not to promote you," I said firmly. "Your designs are brilliant, Kenneth. Remember that waterfront development project that won the State Architecture Award? That was all you." Kenneth's smile seemed genuine, but something flickered behind his eyes. "You always believe in me more than I believe in myself." "That's what wives are for," I teased, then remembered my secret project. "Actually, speaking of believing in you, I have something special to show you." I slipped out of bed and retrieved the wrapped package I'd hidden in my closet. For 3 weeks, I'd been working on this surprise after my evening piano students left, carefully hand-stitching vintage leather and copying original compositions onto heavy paper. Each piece of music told part of our love story, the waltz I'd hummed while we painted our first apartment, the melody playing during his proposal at the lighthouse, even the silly song I'd made up about his morning coffee ritual. Kenneth unwrapped the burgundy leather portfolio with reverent fingers. His expression shifted from curiosity to wonder as he opened the cover. "Wendy, this is incredible. Did you write all of these pieces?" "Every note," I whispered, watching his face as he studied the carefully penned compositions. "I thought you could keep your important architectural plans in here." Whenever you opened it for client meetings, you'd remember that I believe in every blueprint you create. Kenneth pulled me close, his embrace feeling almost desperate. I don't deserve you. I really don't deserve someone as talented and generous as you. At the time, I'd interpreted his words as humble gratitude. Now I realize they might have been the only honest thing he said that morning. After our lazy breakfast of pancakes and fresh strawberries, Kenneth retreated to his home office to review project files while I settled at our kitchen table with my laptop and the monthly financial paperwork. This division of labor had evolved naturally during our marriage. Kenneth focused on his demanding architecture career while I managed our money, tracked income from my piano teaching, and planned our financial future. Opening our online banking, I felt the familiar satisfaction of seeing numbers that represented security and shared dreams. Our joint checking account showed $52,891 accumulated through my music lessons, weekend wedding gigs, and Kenneth's steady salary. The savings account held $31,248.83, carefully set aside for our Mediterranean cruise and future home renovations. I'd established an intricate system of automatic payments that kept Kenneth's life running smoothly. His Spotify premium account, Netflix subscription, Amazon Prime, that expensive gym membership he claimed was essential for stress relief, the premium car wash service that kept his BMW spotless, and the meal delivery service for his increasingly frequent late nights at the office. Every subscription, every convenience, every small luxury that made his demanding career more manageable. "How are we looking this month?" Kenneth called from his office, where I could hear him shuffling through architectural plans. "Better than ever," I replied, reviewing the spreadsheet I'd created to track our progress toward financial goals. "Your promotion couldn't come at a more perfect time. We'll be able to upgrade our cruise cabin to one of those suites with a private balcony, maybe even extend our trip to include Rome." "That sounds amazing," Kenneth said, appearing in the kitchen doorway with his phone in hand. "Actually, I might have news about that promotion today. Angela scheduled a special Sunday meeting to discuss my portfolio." Sunday meetings seemed unusual for an architecture firm, but Kenneth had explained that Angela Davidson operated on her own schedule, often working weekends to stay ahead of demanding clients. I admired her dedication, even though it meant Kenneth spent increasing amounts of time at the office. "She sounds like an incredible mentor," I said, closing the laptop. "I'd love to meet her eventually, maybe at the next company function." Kenneth's expression flickered. A micro-expression so brief I almost missed it. "She's pretty focused on high-level client relationships, not really involved in the social aspects of the firm." Something about his tone felt rehearsed, but I dismissed the feeling. Kenneth had always been private about his work relationships, preferring to keep his professional and personal lives separate. At exactly 2:15 p.m., while I was helping my student Lily work through a challenging Bach invention, my phone buzzed with a text that sent my heart soaring. "Got the promotion. Senior project manager at Davidson & Associates. Angela made it official. Can't believe this is really happening tonight. We celebrate everything we've worked for." I actually squealed with joy, causing Lily to stop mid-phrase and stare at me with wide eyes. "Sorry, sweetie. Just got the most wonderful news about my husband's career." Lily, a precocious 12-year-old with dreams of becoming a concert pianist, grinned. "Did he get that important job he's been hoping for?" "He did. He absolutely did." I felt giddy with excitement, my mind immediately racing through celebration possibilities. This was the moment we'd worked toward for years, the financial security, professional recognition, and validation of Kenneth's architectural talents that would transform our future. After Lily's lesson ended, I sat at my piano bench, my fingers automatically finding the keys as I processed the wonderful news. A melody began forming, something triumphant and hopeful, perhaps the beginning of a new composition celebrating Kenneth's achievement. But music suddenly felt insufficient for this moment. I looked at the portfolio sitting on my bedroom dresser, remembering Kenneth's genuine appreciation this morning. He'd loved the gift, but now it represented something deeper, tangible proof of my support for his dreams. This promotion deserved a grand gesture, something that would show Kenneth how proud I was and how much I believed in the brilliant future stretching ahead of us. The clock read 2:30 p.m. If I left immediately, I could surprise Kenneth at the office with the portfolio, maybe whisk him away for an early celebration dinner at that French restaurant he'd mentioned wanting to try. Kenneth had always appreciated spontaneous romantic gestures, and this felt like the perfect opportunity to remind him why we made such an incredible team. I changed into my favorite flower print dress, the one Kenneth said brought out the gold flecks in my eyes, and carefully rewrapped the portfolio in ivory tissue paper tied with burgundy ribbon. The 40-minute drive into the city would give Kenneth time to finish his meeting with Angela and perhaps share the exciting news with his colleagues. Davidson and Associates occupied 16 floors of a gleaming glass tower that rose from downtown like a monument to architectural ambition. The lobby buzzed with expensive-suited professionals carrying leather portfolios and conducting hushed conversations that probably involved millions of dollars. I approached the reception desk, feeling suddenly self-conscious about my artistic appearance in this corporate environment. "I'm here to see Kenneth Walsh," I told the receptionist, a polished woman whose makeup looked professionally applied and whose suit probably cost more than I earned in a month from piano lessons. Her expression shifted when I mentioned Kenneth's name, a micro-change that I noticed but couldn't interpret. "And you are?" "His wife, Wendy." I wanted to surprise him with something special to celebrate his promotion to senior project manager. The receptionist's eyes swept over my flower print dress and carefully wrapped gift, her professional smile remaining fixed while something calculating flickered behind her eyes. "Mr. Walsh is currently in a meeting with Miss Davidson. I'm not sure when they'll be available." "That's perfect," I said, maintaining my cheerful demeanor despite feeling increasingly out of place in this intimidating environment. "I'll just wait for him on the executive floor." Before the receptionist could object, Jake Sullivan materialized beside the marble desk like he'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Kenneth had mentioned Jake before, a mid-level architect with a reputation for office politics and barely concealed ambition. His smile felt predatory as his eyes locked onto my wrapped gift with unsettling intensity. Well, look who's here," Jake said, his tone carrying undertones I couldn't decipher but instinctively disliked. "Kenneth's talented wife, right? The piano teacher coming to celebrate the big promotion with Angela Davidson." "Word travels fast in architecture firms," I replied, trying to match his casual tone while suppressing growing discomfort. Jake's smile widened, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp. "Oh, word travels incredibly fast around here, especially when it involves Kenneth and Angela. They've been having quite a lot of intensive meetings lately." He paused deliberately, watching my face. Very private, very focused sessions. Kenneth's been staying late almost every night for the past few months, really dedicating himself to impressing Angela. The way Jake emphasized certain words made my stomach twist with undefined anxiety. Something in his tone suggested meanings beyond professional mentorship, implications that my rational mind rejected, even as my intuition recognized warning signals. "Kenneth's always been dedicated to his career," I said carefully. "Angela sounds like an excellent mentor for someone with his talent." Jake's laugh felt sharp and knowing. "Mentor. Yes, that's certainly one way to describe their relationship, though I'd say their collaboration has become quite comprehensive lately. Very hands-on, you might say." I left Jake standing by the reception desk, his cryptic comments echoing in my mind as I rode the elevator to the executive floor. With each floor the elevator climbed, my chest felt tighter, as if the building's altitude was compressing my lungs. By the time I reached the 15th floor, my palms were damp despite the aggressive air conditioning. The executive level felt dramatically different from the bustling lower floors, quieter, more exclusive, with plush carpeting that absorbed sound and original artwork that probably cost more than my annual teaching income. Angela Davidson's corner office sat at the end of a long hallway lined with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered stunning views of the city below. As I approached her office, I could hear voices inside. Kenneth's familiar baritone mixed with a woman's throaty laughter. They sounded relaxed, comfortable, intimate, in a way that made my footsteps involuntarily slow. The conversation had a quality I couldn't name, something private and personal that seemed to extend far beyond professional boundaries. The office door stood slightly ajar, revealing a narrow slice of the luxurious room beyond. I could see expensive furniture, abstract paintings, and the edge of what appeared to be a massive mahogany desk. Kenneth said something I couldn't quite hear, his voice warm and affectionate, followed by Angela's rich laughter, the kind of laugh that suggested shared secrets and inside jokes. My hand trembled as I raised it to knock on the doorframe. Something about the quality of their interaction felt forbidden, like I was about to intrude on something I wasn't meant to witness. But this was my husband, and I was here to celebrate his professional triumph with a gift created from love and pride. "Kenneth?" I called softly, pushing the door open wider. "Surprise!" The voices inside went abruptly silent. I stepped into Angela Davidson's corner office, my carefully wrapped portfolio clutched in both hands, ready to share in my husband's moment of career victory. Instead, I discovered that everything I believed about my marriage had been a carefully constructed lie. Kenneth stood pressed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, his arms wrapped around a stunning brunette woman in an expensive navy suit. They were kissing with desperate, consuming passion, not the awkward fumbling of a moment's weakness, but the practiced intimacy of lovers who had done this many times before. Her manicured fingers were tangled in his hair. His hands gripped her waist like she was the only thing preventing him from drowning. The portfolio slipped from my numb fingers, hitting the polished marble floor with a sound that seemed to echo through my soul, like the death knell of everything I'd thought was real. Time fractured into slow motion as my brain struggled to process the impossible scene before me. Kenneth's hands cradled Angela's face with a tenderness I recognized, the same gentle touch he used when he thought I was sleeping and would brush hair from my forehead. But this tenderness belonged to someone else now. Angela's expensive navy suit was wrinkled, her perfectly styled hair mussed from Kenneth's fingers. She wore red lipstick that was now smeared across both their mouths, and I found myself absurdly wondering if that was the shade called passion red or crimson kiss. These ridiculous details anchored my mind as it reeled from the enormity of what I was witnessing. This wasn't some spontaneous moment of celebration gone wrong. Their movements spoke of practiced familiarity, of countless similar encounters. Kenneth's thumb traced Angela's jawline with muscle memory, while her hands rested on his chest like she knew exactly where his heartbeat was strongest. They fit together with the ease of lovers who had mapped each other's bodies through repetition and time. The afternoon sunlight streaming through those floor-to-ceiling windows created a golden halo around their embrace, turning their betrayal into something cinematically beautiful. I wanted to scream at the universe for making something so devastating look so perfect, so meant to be. Kenneth murmured something against Angela's lips, words too soft for me to hear, but intimate enough to make her smile against his mouth. That smile destroyed me more than the kiss itself. It spoke of inside jokes and shared secrets, of a relationship that extended far beyond stolen moments in corner offices. My carefully wrapped portfolio hit the marble floor with a sound that seemed to echo through the building's steel bones. The burgundy ribbon came undone, and I watched my handwritten compositions scatter across the polished stone like fallen leaves, each page representing hours of love that now felt foolish and wasted. Neither Kenneth nor Angela registered the sound of my gift hitting the floor. They remained lost in their private world, oblivious to the wife whose heart was disintegrating in the doorway. Kenneth's hand moved to the small of Angela's back, a gesture so familiar it made my stomach lurch. I'd seen him make that exact movement with me countless times at dinner parties and wedding receptions, claiming me as his with that possessive yet protective touch. Now I understood it had never really been ours. I backed out of the office on unsteady legs, my body moving without conscious direction from my brain. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly before me, like something from a fever dream where distances became fluid and unreliable. My flower print dress felt suddenly childish against the corporate sophistication surrounding me, a costume from a life that no longer existed. Other employees moved through the hallway, carrying files and conducting hushed conversations about deadlines and client presentations. A young woman in a crisp white blouse glanced at me with concern, probably wondering why someone was standing frozen outside the senior partner's office, looking like they'd witnessed a catastrophe. "Are you all right?" she asked, her voice seeming to come from very far away. I nodded automatically, though nothing about me was all right. Nothing would ever be all right again. "Just waiting for someone," I managed, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. The elevator arrived with a cheerful ding that felt obscenely normal given that my world had just ended. I stepped inside and watched the numbers descend, 15, 14, 13, each floor taking me further from the truth I'd never wanted to discover, but could never unknow. The parking garage felt like an underground tomb as I fumbled for my car keys with shaking hands. My reflection in the driver's side window showed a woman I barely recognized, pale, hollow-eyed, wearing the shell-shocked expression of someone who'd survived a natural disaster. The 40-minute drive back to Moonrise Bay became a torturous journey through 7 years of memories that were now contaminated with new understanding. Every song on the radio seemed designed to mock me. Every billboard advertising happy couples felt like a personal insult from the universe. I thought about Kenneth's increasing work hours over the past 4 months. "Angela needs me to review these proposals," he'd say, staying at the office until 9 or 10 at night. "She's really pushing for this promotion, and I can't let her down." He couldn't let her down. Not me, her. The expensive dinners charged to our credit card that Kenneth claimed were client meetings. The new cologne I'd noticed but attributed to a midlife confidence boost. The way he'd started going to the gym more frequently, coming home with that post-workout glow that I'd found attractive and encouraging. He'd been making himself more attractive, just not for me. My phone buzzed with a text from Kenneth, meeting running long. "Don't wait up for dinner. We'll celebrate tomorrow night properly. Love you. Love you." 2 words that now felt like daggers twisted in my chest. How could he type those words with the same fingers that had just been tangled in another woman's hair? Our cottage greeted me with the same Sunday afternoon serenity it always had. But everything felt different now. The Mediterranean cruise brochures scattered across our kitchen table mocked me with their promises of romantic sunsets and couples cooking classes. Kenneth had been so enthusiastic about this trip, talking about new adventures and taking our relationship to the next level. Now I wondered if those phrases had double meanings I'd been too trusting to recognize. I wandered through our home like a detective examining a crime scene, Kenneth's phone charger in the guest bathroom. When had he started charging his phone separately from mine? The expensive suit hanging in our closet that I didn't remember him buying, a receipt tucked in his jacket pocket for dinner at Romano's, an upscale restaurant downtown that he'd never taken me to. Our wedding photo on the mantelpiece showed 2 people who looked impossibly young and naive. I stared at my 24-year-old self, radiant in white lace, gazing at Kenneth like he held the secrets to eternal happiness. That girl had no idea she was marrying someone capable of such elaborate deception. The answering machine blinked with a message. I pressed play, expecting perhaps a student canceling a lesson or my mother checking in about our cruise plans. Instead, Angela Davidson's voice filled our kitchen. "Kenneth, you left your architectural pencils in my office. I'll hold on to them until our next meeting. Looking forward to discussing those blueprints in more detail." The way she said blueprints made it clear they weren't discussing architecture. I sank into our kitchen chair, the same one where I'd managed our finances that morning, feeling secure and loved and utterly foolish, and waited for the breakdown I expected to come. The sobbing, the denial, the desperate phone calls to friends seeking comfort and advice. But something else happened. Something cold and calculating settled in my chest where my heart used to be. I thought about my piano students, 12-year-old Lily with her dreams of concert halls, elderly Mrs. Patterson, who'd started lessons at 70 because she'd always wanted to play Chopin, young couples planning their wedding music with such hope and excitement. These people trusted me with their musical dreams, paid me well for my expertise, and respected my artistic talents. I thought about our financial accounts, all managed by me because I was so good with numbers. Kenneth had no idea how much I'd saved, how carefully I'd invested, how many different income streams I'd cultivated through my music career. He saw me as the sweet, supportive wife who handled boring money matters while he pursued his important architectural career. He had no idea who he was really dealing with. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Kenneth. "Can't stop thinking about this morning and your beautiful gift. You're the best thing that ever happened to me." I stared at those words, lies typed with such casual cruelty, and felt the last vestiges of my old self dissolve. The woman who'd woken up this morning believing in love and partnership and shared dreams was gone, replaced by someone harder, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous. Kenneth thought he was playing chess with someone who didn't even know the game had started. He was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. I deleted Kenneth's lying text without responding and opened my laptop with the methodical precision of a surgeon preparing for a complex operation. The kitchen table that had witnessed countless romantic dinners and lazy Sunday morning conversations was about to become my war room. The banking website loaded with its familiar blue interface. But I was seeing these numbers through completely different eyes now. Our joint checking account showed $52,891.47, money I'd always thought of as ours, but was now calculating as predominantly mine. I opened a new spreadsheet and began documenting the sources of every deposit over the past 2 years. Piano lessons, $127 per week from 12 regular students, plus occasional makeup sessions. Wedding performances, $800 to $1,200 per event, depending on the venue and ceremony length. Corporate events, where I provided background music, $300 to $500 per evening. Summer music camps, where I taught intensive workshops, $2,400 for each 2-week session. The numbers painted a picture I'd somehow never fully grasped. Kenneth's architectural salary provided steady income, but my artistic work generated nearly 60% of our household earnings. Yet somehow, he'd made me feel like the junior partner in our financial relationship, the one who handled small details while he focused on serious career advancement. I clicked over to our savings account, $31,248.83, money we'd earmarked for the Mediterranean cruise Kenneth had been so excited about. Now I realized why he'd been pushing for expensive upgrades, the suite with the private balcony, the premium dining package, the extended stay in Santorini. He'd been planning to use my earnings to fund what might have been our farewell trip before he left me for Angela. But there were other accounts Kenneth didn't know about. My separate business account for music lesson payments, $18,347. The emergency fund I'd been building secretly, putting aside $25 from each wedding gig, $4,231. Even the small investment account I'd opened with inheritance money from my grandmother, $12,876. Kenneth had no idea how financially independent I actually was. I pulled up the credit card management portal and stared at the 5 accounts that had been funding Kenneth's double life. The Platinum Visa, with its $25,000 limit that he used for his expensive suits and latest iPhone upgrades. The Business American Express that supposedly covered client entertainment, dinners that I now realized included Angela. The store cards for Nordstrom, where he'd been buying clothes I'd never seen him wear. Best Buy, where he'd purchased gadgets that never appeared in our home. My hands trembled slightly as I dialed the first customer service number. The Visa representative answered with practiced cheerfulness. "Hello, this is Sandra with Platinum Customer Care. How can I assist you today?" "I need to cancel my account immediately," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I'm sorry to hear that. May I ask the reason for cancellation?" "Fraudulent use," I replied, which felt more honest than it should have. "I've discovered unauthorized charges. I understand your concern. I'll be happy to close this account for you right away." The process took 12 minutes. 12 minutes to sever Kenneth's access to $25,000 in credit that he'd been using to wine and dine his boss, while I stayed home managing our finances and planning our fake future together. The American Express cancellation felt even more satisfying. When the representative asked about the reason, I said, "The primary cardholder has been using this card for personal expenses disguised as business transactions." Each subsequent call became easier. The Nordstrom card canceled, the Best Buy account terminated, the gas station credit card that Kenneth used for his increasingly frequent trips downtown closed permanently. Kenneth's automated lifestyle had always impressed me with its efficiency. Every entertainment and convenience service built automatically to our shared accounts, making his life seamless and stress-free. Now that automation was about to become his nightmare. I started with Spotify Premium. Kenneth listened to carefully curated playlists during his morning workouts and evening drives. The subscription had been running for 4 years at $9.99 per month. I called customer service and canceled it effective immediately. Netflix came next. The premium family plan that Kenneth used to watch architectural documentaries and what he claimed were mindless action movies for stress relief. I now wondered if he'd been watching romantic comedies with Angela, streaming them on his laptop during their late-night work sessions. Amazon Prime had been a particular point of pride for Kenneth. Free shipping on his impulse purchases, access to movies and shows, even grocery delivery when he claimed to be too exhausted from work to shop. The annual membership cost $139, but the convenience had been worth it. "You'll know." "I'd like to cancel my Prime membership and request a prorated refund," I told the Amazon representative. "May I ask why you're canceling?" Change in financial circumstances, I said, which was about to become very true for Kenneth. The meal delivery service cancellation felt especially vindictive. Fresh Direct had been delivering expensive prepared meals to Kenneth's office 3 times per week, supposedly for those late nights when he was too busy to come home for dinner, $48 per order charged automatically to our joint account. I'd encouraged this subscription, thinking it was helping Kenneth maintain his health during stressful work periods. Now I realized those meals were probably being shared with Angela during their intimate overtime sessions. Elena Rodriguez had installed our original locks when we'd first bought the cottage 4 years ago. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who ran her family locksmith business with quiet efficiency and professional discretion. When I called her emergency line, she answered on the second ring. Rodriguez, locksmith. Elena speaking. Elena, this is Wendy Walsh from the Moonrise Bay Cottage. I need an emergency lock change on all exterior doors. Everything all right, honey? You sound stressed. Elena had always been perceptive. She'd probably sensed trouble in dozens of emergency calls over her 20-year career. I've discovered some security concerns. I need new locks as soon as possible. I can be there in 45 minutes. You want deadbolts changed, too? Everything. Front door, back door, garage entry. I want completely new keys. Elena arrived with her van full of hardware and her toolbox that had seen thousands of similar domestic emergencies. She worked efficiently, asking no questions while I watched her install fresh deadbolts and doorknob locks. The sound of her drill echoed through our cottage like a declaration of independence. Old keys won't work anymore, she said, handing me a ring with 3 shiny new keys. You want me to make any extras? Just these 3. No one else needs access. Elena studied my face with knowing eyes. You take care of yourself, Wendy. Whatever's going on, you're handling it right. After Elena left, I settled back at my laptop and began researching divorce attorneys in our area. Kenneth had always joked that lawyers were parasites, but I was about to discover that the right parasite could be exactly what I needed. I created a new folder on my desktop labeled Financial Documents and began organizing evidence, bank statements showing the true sources of our income, credit card bills revealing Kenneth's suspicious spending patterns, screenshots of our various accounts before I'd started making changes. The portfolio I'd made for Kenneth still sat on our kitchen counter where I'd left it that morning before my world imploded. I photographed each hand-stitched page, documenting the hours of love and effort I'd invested in celebrating a man who'd been betraying me for months. This wasn't going to be a simple divorce. This was going to be a reckoning, and Kenneth had no idea what was coming for him. Monday night passed in restless fragments of sleep, interrupted by the phantom sound of my phone buzzing. Every notification made me tense, expecting Kenneth's return or his questions about why his cards weren't working. But silence stretched through the darkness, broken only by the rhythmic crash of waves against the shore outside our bedroom window. Tuesday morning arrived with gray clouds that matched my mood perfectly. I sat at our kitchen table with my second cup of coffee, staring at the laptop screen where I'd been researching divorce attorneys since dawn. The cottage felt different now, larger and emptier, as if Kenneth's betrayal had somehow altered the physical dimensions of our shared space. At exactly 8:47 a.m., my email notification chimed with a message that would change everything. The sender's name made me pause, Sophie Martinez, followed by an email signature indicating she worked as a senior accountant at Davidson and Associates. I'd never heard Kenneth mention a Sophie, which immediately made her message feel significant in ways I couldn't yet understand. The subject line read simply, "Something you need to know." My finger hesitated over the mouse. Part of me wanted to delete this email unread to preserve whatever remained of my ignorance and avoid confirming suspicions that were still crystallizing in my mind. But a stronger part, the part that had been systematically dismantling Kenneth's comfortable life for the past 18 hours, clicked open. Dear Mrs. Walsh. The email began with formal politeness that somehow made its contents feel more ominous. I hope this message finds you well, though I suspect that may not be the case. My name is Sophie Martinez, and I work in the accounting department at Davidson and Associates. I've been struggling with whether to contact you for several weeks now, but after witnessing events yesterday afternoon, I can no longer remain silent. My heart rate accelerated as I read further. Sophie explained that she'd been aware of Kenneth and Angela's relationship for approximately 4 months, having accidentally discovered evidence of their affair while processing expense reports and reviewing company communications. She wrote with the careful precision of someone who understood the legal implications of workplace relationships and the human cost of personal betrayal. "I want to be clear that I'm not motivated by office politics or personal grievances," Sophie continued. "I'm reaching out because I have a younger sister who was similarly deceived by her husband, and I remember how much it meant to her when someone finally told her the truth. You deserve to know what's been happening behind your back." The email concluded with an offer to meet at a location of my choosing, where Sophie would share the evidence she'd collected. She emphasized that her decision came from basic human decency, rather than any desire to harm the company or advance her own position. I stared at the screen for several minutes, processing the implications. A complete stranger was offering to blow up Kenneth's professional life because she couldn't stand watching an innocent woman being deceived. The kindness of this gesture from someone who owed me nothing felt overwhelming after Kenneth's casual cruelty. I replied immediately, suggesting we meet at the Lighthouse Cafe, a quiet seaside restaurant 20 minutes from our cottage where the afternoon crowd would provide cover for sensitive conversation. Sophie Martinez turned out to be a woman in her early 30s with intelligent dark eyes and the kind of understated professional appearance that suggested competence without drawing attention. She arrived at the Lighthouse Cafe carrying a manila envelope that she clutched like it contained explosive materials, which, in many ways, it did. We chose a corner booth overlooking the harbor, where the sound of seagulls and distant boat engines would mask our conversation from other diners. Sophie ordered coffee with shaking hands, her nervous energy palpable as she arranged the envelope on the table between us. "I want to start by saying how sorry I am," she began, her voice soft but steady. "What I'm about to show you is going to be difficult to see, but you have a right to know the truth about your marriage." Sophie opened the envelope and spread several printed emails across the scarred wooden table. The papers looked official and damning, like evidence being presented in a courtroom. Her fingers trembled slightly as she organized the documents, and I could see the genuine distress this revelation was causing her. "I discovered these emails accidentally while reviewing expense account irregularities," Sophie explained. "Kenneth and Angela have been using company resources for personal activities, which required me to examine their communications more closely. I never intended to uncover their affair, but once I saw these messages, I couldn't ignore what was happening." She paused, studying my face with compassionate concern. "I debated for weeks about whether to contact you. On one hand, it wasn't my business. On the other hand, you were being systematically deceived by people who were supposed to respect both you and company policies." The first email Sophie showed me was dated 3.5 months ago, sent from Kenneth's company account to someone listed as Derek Thompson, apparently his college roommate who now lived in Seattle. The casual tone made the content even more devastating. "You were right about office affairs being dangerous," Kenneth had written. "But sometimes the risk is worth the reward. Angela is making moves that could benefit both of us professionally, and the personal benefits aren't exactly a hardship either. The best part is that Wendy's completely oblivious. She's too wrapped up in her little piano students and wedding gigs to notice that I'm building my real future." My hands clenched involuntarily as I read Kenneth's dismissive reference to my music career as little piano students. The same artistic work that generated 60% of our household income, that Kenneth had always claimed to respect and admire, was reduced to a trivial hobby that kept me conveniently distracted. The second email was even worse. Kenneth described Angela as everything Wendy isn't: ambitious, sophisticated, focused on real success instead of artistic fantasies. He discussed their relationship, the detached planning of someone organizing a business transaction rather than engaging in a passionate affair. "Angela is already hinting about opportunities in the firm's new branch office," Kenneth had written to Derek. "6-figure salary, executive benefits, and a partner who understands the corporate world. I've been subsidizing Wendy's music hobby for years while she plays house in that cottage. Time to upgrade to someone who can actually contribute to my career advancement." Reading those words felt like being repeatedly slapped. Kenneth had been tolerating our marriage while planning his escape to what he considered a superior life. Every encouragement he'd given my music, every romantic gesture, every moment of seeming support had been performance art designed to keep me compliant while he positioned himself for betrayal. Sophie reached into her bag and produced her smartphone, her expression growing even more apologetic. I need to warn you that what you're about to hear is going to be very painful. These recordings were captured accidentally during budget meetings where I was taking notes on company expenses. She pressed play, and Kenneth's voice filled our corner of the cafe with devastating clarity. The conversation appeared to be between Kenneth and Angela, discussing their relationship with chilling, casual cruelty. Wendy's been putting every penny from her music lessons into our joint accounts, Kenneth was saying, his tone carrying the detached amusement of someone discussing a naive child. The sweet, trusting artist actually thinks we're saving for our future together. She has no idea I'm planning to file for divorce after I secure this promotion and establish myself in the new position. Angela's laughter rippled through the phone speaker like acid. She sounds adorable. Does she still leave you little love notes in your lunch? Every morning, Kenneth replied, and I could hear the eye roll in his voice. Like we're still in high school. It would be endearing if it wasn't so pathetic. But her earnestness makes the financial arrangement convenient. She handles all our money management because she thinks she's being helpful, which means she's essentially funding my exit strategy without realizing it. The recording continued for several more minutes with Kenneth and Angela discussing their timeline for his divorce, her promotion to regional manager, and their plans to relocate together to the firm's expanding West Coast operation. They talked about my marriage like it was a temporary inconvenience rather than 7 years of shared life and love. Sophie and I spent the next hour constructing a detailed chronology of Kenneth and Angela's affair, cross-referencing her observations with my memories of his changed behavior. The pattern that emerged was sickeningly methodical. 4 months ago, Kenneth's first late-night project review with Angela, coinciding with her separation from her husband, the beginning of frequent texts and after-hours meetings that Kenneth explained as intensive mentoring for his promotion prospects. 3 months ago, Kenneth's sudden interest in expensive restaurants downtown, claiming he needed to network with something clients. Sophie's expense reports showed these dinners were always for 2 people, always at intimate venues, always charged to Kenneth's company card. 2 months ago, Kenneth's membership at that high-end gym, which he claimed was necessary for stress management. Sophie revealed that Angela had joined the same gym during the same week. Their membership applications processed consecutively. 1 month ago, Kenneth's weekend architectural conference in the mountains, which Sophie's records showed was actually a romantic getaway at a resort that specialized in couples retreats. Angela had taken vacation days during the same period. Sophie also provided crucial information about company policies that Kenneth and Angela had violated. Davidson and Associates required disclosure of any romantic relationship between supervisors and subordinates, particularly when one party had influence over the other's career advancement. Their secret affair constituted grounds for disciplinary action, potentially including termination. "They've been incredibly reckless," Sophie said, organizing the evidence back into her envelope. "Either they thought they were too smart to get caught, or they didn't care about the consequences because they were planning to leave anyway." Looking at the timeline spread across our table, I realized that Kenneth and Angela had been planning their future together for longer than they'd been actively deceiving me. This wasn't a moment of weakness that spiraled out of control. This was a calculated campaign of emotional and financial fraud that had been executed with precision and complete disregard for my well-being. But now I had proof. And proof, as I was about to learn, was a very dangerous weapon in the right hands. Sophie gathered her evidence back into the manila envelope with the careful precision of someone who understood the explosive nature of what she'd just shared. The weight of Kenneth's documented betrayal sat between us on the cafe table like a loaded weapon waiting to be fired. "What are you going to do with all this?" Sophie asked, her voice carrying genuine concern for my well-being alongside professional curiosity about the consequences her revelations might trigger. I stared out at the harbor, where fishing boats bobbed peacefully in the afternoon sun, their simple honesty in stark contrast to the elaborate deception I'd been living with for months. "I'm going to make sure Kenneth learns that underestimating someone is the most dangerous mistake you can make." That evening, I researched divorce attorneys with the same methodical intensity I'd applied to financial planning. One name kept appearing in articles about high-profile divorces and corporate misconduct cases: Victoria Blackwood, founder of Blackwood and Associates, known in legal circles as the Shark in Pearls. Victoria Blackwood's office occupied the top floor of a downtown legal complex that overlooked the city like a predator surveying its territory. The reception area alone telegraphed success: original artwork, leather furniture that probably cost more than most people's cars, and a view that stretched to the horizon. Fresh orchids adorned every surface, their elegant beauty masking something faintly dangerous. Victoria herself appeared exactly as I'd imagined from her reputation. Mid-50s, silver hair styled in a precision cut that framed sharp cheekbones, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly income from piano lessons. But it was her eyes that truly conveyed her legendary status: intelligent, calculating, and absolutely ruthless. "Mrs. Walsh," she said, extending a perfectly manicured hand, "I understand you have an interesting situation that requires my particular expertise." Her office reflected her personality: floor-to-ceiling law books arranged with military precision, diplomas from Harvard and Yale displayed prominently, and photographs showing Victoria with judges, politicians, and celebrities who'd apparently required her services. A crystal paperweight shaped like a shark sat prominently on her mahogany desk, a gift from a grateful client, according to the engraved plaque. I spread Sophie's evidence across Victoria's conference table while she listened to my story with laser focus, occasionally making notes in handwriting so precise it looked typeset. When I finished explaining Kenneth's 4-month deception, Victoria leaned back in her chair with an expression that reminded me of a cat contemplating a particularly vulnerable mouse. "Your husband made several critical errors," she said, her voice carrying the satisfaction of a professional who recognized amateur mistakes. "First, he documented everything. Second, he involved his workplace in personal misconduct. Third, he underestimated his wife's intelligence and resources. These aren't just grounds for divorce. They're grounds for total financial annihilation." Victoria opened a legal pad and began sketching what she called Kenneth's pathway to destruction. Her strategic mind transformed my emotional devastation into legal warfare with clinical precision. Standard adultery cases often become he said, she said situations, Victoria explained, her pen moving across the page with confident strokes. But Kenneth has provided us with documented evidence of premeditated fraud. His emails discussing plans to use marital assets for his escape strategy constitute theft of marital property. The recorded conversations show conspiracy to commit financial fraud, and his workplace relationship creates multiple additional vulnerabilities. She pulled out a thick folder labeled Financial Fraud Precedents and flipped through case studies that made my situation look almost routine. The beauty of Kenneth's approach is how thoroughly he incriminated himself. Most cheating spouses try to hide their activities. Your husband wrote a detailed confession and handed it to us. Victoria's excitement was palpable as she realized the scope of evidence available. "We're not just talking about asset division anymore. We're discussing punitive damages, restitution for emotional distress, and civil penalties for financial misconduct." Kenneth wanted to play sophisticated games. Now he gets to learn the sophisticated consequences. The timeline strategy Victoria developed focused on Kenneth's escalating deception over 4 months. We'll demonstrate a pattern of calculated fraud that began when his affair started and intensified as he planned his exit. Every expense, every lie, every documented conversation becomes evidence of systematic theft and emotional abuse. Victoria connected me with Dr. Patricia Chin, a forensic accountant whose specialty was uncovering hidden assets and documenting financial misconduct in divorce cases. Dr. Chin arrived the following morning with laptop computers and analysis software that could trace money movements with microscopic precision. "Financial infidelity often leaves more evidence than people realize," Dr. Chin explained while uploading our bank records into her analysis programs. "People think deleting transactions or using cash makes them invisible, but money always leaves tracks." The computer analysis revealed patterns I'd never noticed despite managing our finances. Kenneth's credit card charges showed systematic deception dating back 4 months, exactly coinciding with the timeline Sophie had established for his affair with Angela. Restaurant charges for expensive dinners occurred exclusively on evenings when I was teaching late lessons or performing at weddings. Hotel charges appeared on weekends when Kenneth claimed to be attending architectural conferences or meeting with clients. gift purchases from jewelry stores and boutiques that I'd never seen reflected in our home or Kenneth's appearance. "Look at this pattern," Dr. Chin said, pointing to a spreadsheet that color-coded Kenneth's suspicious expenses. "These charges total $11,847 over 4 months, all funded by joint accounts that were primarily supported by your music income. He was essentially forcing you to pay for your own betrayal." The analysis also revealed Kenneth's increasing financial boldness as his affair progressed. Early charges were modest, coffee shops and casual restaurants, but recent expenses showed escalating extravagance, 5-star hotels, exclusive restaurants, expensive gifts that suggested he was becoming more confident about his deception succeeding. Victoria assigned her paralegal, Marcus Rivera, to research Davidson and Associates' corporate policies and ethical guidelines. What he discovered added another dimension to our legal strategy that neither Kenneth nor Angela had apparently considered. Davidson and Associates has extremely strict policies about supervisor-subordinate relationships, Marcus reported during our strategy session. Any romantic involvement between employees at different hierarchy levels must be disclosed to Human Resources and the legal department within 30 days of initiation. He spread copies of the employee handbook across Victoria's conference table, highlighting relevant sections with yellow markers. Failure to disclose creates liability for both employees and potentially the company itself. Kenneth and Angela exposed the firm to sexual harassment lawsuits, ethics violations, and regulatory scrutiny. Victoria's smile turned predatory as she absorbed these implications. Corporate law firms are obsessively protective of their reputations. When we demonstrate that Kenneth and Angela violated disclosure policies while using company resources for personal activities, Davidson and Associates will distance themselves faster than you can say liability insurance. The employee handbook revealed additional violations that Kenneth and Angela had apparently ignored. Using company email for personal communications violated information technology policies. Charging personal expenses to company accounts constituted theft of corporate resources. Meeting during business hours for non-work purposes violated productivity requirements. Their affair wasn't just personal misconduct, Victoria concluded. It was a systematic violation of corporate policies that exposed their employer to legal and financial risks. The firm will prioritize protecting itself over protecting 2 employees who created liability through their poor judgment. Victoria's approach to serving Kenneth with divorce papers elevated revenge to an art form. Rather than simple delivery at home or work, she proposed a strategy designed to maximize professional humiliation while ensuring maximum witness impact. Davidson and Associates holds their annual client presentation next Thursday, Victoria said, reviewing her research into the firm's public events. 50 to 70 clients, all major corporate accounts, plus every employee from junior architects to senior partners. Kenneth will probably be presenting his latest projects, basking in his promotion glory. She pulled up the firm's event calendar on her computer, showing a conference room booking for their biggest presentation space. "We'll coordinate with professional process servers who specialize in high-impact delivery. The goal is to serve papers at the moment of Kenneth's greatest professional triumph, transforming his victory celebration into public humiliation." Victoria's strategy considered every detail. Timing the service during Kenneth's presentation segment, ensuring Angela received her papers simultaneously, positioning servers for maximum visibility, coordinating with building security to prevent interference. Public humiliation isn't just emotionally satisfying, Victoria explained with clinical precision. It serves strategic purposes. Kenneth's colleagues will witness his misconduct firsthand. Clients will question the firm's judgment in promoting someone capable of such deception. The professional consequences will extend far beyond our divorce case. As Victoria outlined her plan, I realized that Kenneth had been playing checkers while thinking he was engaged in chess. But Victoria Blackwood played a completely different game, one where the rules favored preparation, documentation, and the kind of strategic thinking that turned an opponent's strengths into their ultimate weaknesses. Kenneth was about to discover that his sweet, naive artist wife had assembled a legal arsenal that would make his sophisticated deception look like amateur theater. The curtain was about to fall on his performance, and the audience was going to be much larger than he'd ever imagined. Thursday morning dawned crisp and clear. The kind of autumn day that made everything look sharp and defined, as if the universe had adjusted its contrast settings for maximum clarity. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, selecting my outfit with the precision of a general choosing armor for the most important battle of her life. The navy blue dress I chose projected competence without appearing overly formal, professional enough to command respect in a corporate environment, but elegant enough to remind everyone that Kenneth had thrown away something valuable. I paired it with my grandmother's pearl earrings and the silver bracelet Kenneth had given me for our 3rd anniversary, back when his gifts still carried genuine sentiment. In the mirror, I practiced the statement Victoria and I had crafted together. That's for theft of marital assets and conspiracy to commit financial fraud. Turns out your sweet, naive artist wife learned a few things about protecting herself. The words needed to carry across a crowded room with crystal clarity, cutting through the shocked silence that would follow Kenneth's public humiliation. My voice remained steady through 3 rehearsals, each repetition strengthening my resolve. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice delivered publicly to match the public nature of Kenneth and Angela's betrayal. They'd conducted their affair in Kenneth's workplace, using company resources involving colleagues in their deception through lies about late meetings and business dinners. Their misconduct had been public. Their consequences would be equally visible. Victoria called at 9:30 a.m. with final coordination details. The process server will be in position by 2:45 p.m., she explained, her voice carrying the satisfaction of a perfectly executed plan coming to fruition. Robert Chin is a 20-year veteran who's served papers in courtrooms, corporate boardrooms, and country clubs. He knows how to command attention and deliver documents with maximum impact. We reviewed the timing one final time. Kenneth's presentation was scheduled for 3:00 p.m., following the firm's overview and financial projections. He'd be presenting his latest architectural designs to Davidson and Associates' biggest clients, probably basking in the recognition his promotion had brought. Angela would be by his side, representing the executive leadership that had supposedly recognized his exceptional talent. "Remember," Victoria said, "once the papers are served, you have about 30 seconds before security or management tries to intervene. Make your statement clearly and completely, then exit with dignity. Let the legal documents speak for themselves." After that, Davidson and Associates' main conference room occupied the entire 16th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic city views that proclaimed the firm's success and ambition. By 2:50 p.m., the space buzzed with approximately 70 people, corporate clients in expensive suits, municipal planning officials, and every architect and administrator from junior staff to senior partners. Kenneth stood at the front of the room beside a presentation screen, wearing his charcoal gray suit and the confidence that came with professional recognition. Angela positioned herself slightly behind him and to his right, her posture radiating executive authority and personal satisfaction. They looked comfortable together, probably enjoying the secret thrill of their hidden relationship playing out before an unsuspecting audience. I entered through the back doors during the applause following the previous presenter, choosing a seat along the wall where I'd be visible when Kenneth turned to acknowledge the audience. Several people glanced at me curiously, a woman alone in a room dominated by business relationships and professional networking. I recognized a few faces from past company events, colleagues who'd made polite conversation about my music career while secretly wondering why Kenneth had married someone so different from his corporate world. Kenneth began his presentation with practiced enthusiasm, discussing sustainable architecture and innovative design solutions with the passion that had originally attracted me to him. His voice carried easily across the room, confident and engaging, while Angela nodded approvingly at key points in his presentation. They'd probably rehearsed this performance together during their private meetings, perfecting the professional dynamic that masked their personal relationship. 25 minutes into Kenneth's presentation, I spotted Robert Chin entering through the main doors. The process server looked exactly as Victoria had described, medium height, unremarkable appearance, carrying a leather portfolio that could easily contain architectural drawings or legal documents. He positioned himself near the front row, close enough to reach Kenneth quickly when the moment arrived. Kenneth was explaining his innovative approach to environmentally sustainable office buildings when Robert Chin stood up and walked toward the presentation area with purposeful strides. The movement caught Kenneth's attention mid-sentence, causing him to pause and look questioningly at this unexpected interruption. Kenneth Walsh, Robert announced, his voice trained to carry clearly across crowded rooms. You've been served. The thick manila envelope landed in Kenneth's hands, with a sound that seemed to echo through the suddenly silent conference room. 70 professionals who'd been listening to architectural presentations suddenly found themselves witnesses to a personal drama unfolding in real time. Kenneth's face cycled through expressions like a time-lapse photograph of emotional collapse. Confusion at the interruption gave way to recognition as he saw my name on the legal documents. Recognition transformed into dawning horror as he realized that his carefully hidden affair was about to become public knowledge in the most catastrophic way possible. "What is this?" Kenneth managed, his voice cracking slightly as his confident presenter persona disintegrated before his colleagues and clients. His hands trembled as he opened the envelope, scanning the first page of legal documents that detailed adultery charges, financial fraud allegations, and conspiracy to commit theft of marital assets. The color drained from his face as he recognized Sophie's evidence reproduced in official legal language, complete with email transcripts and financial analysis that documented every aspect of his 4-month deception. The conference room had fallen completely silent, 70 people holding their collective breath while Kenneth processed the legal documents that were destroying his life in real time. Angela stepped closer to him, probably trying to read over his shoulder and understand the scope of their exposure. That's when I stood up and delivered the statement Victoria and I had crafted with surgical precision. "That's for theft of marital assets and conspiracy to commit financial fraud," I announced, my voice carrying clearly across the dead silent room. "Turns out your sweet, naive artist wife learned a few things about protecting herself." The words felt empowering after months of being deceived, dismissed, and underestimated. I watched Kenneth's professional facade crumble as colleagues who'd respected his architectural talent realized they'd been watching an adulterer and financial fraud perpetrator present their company's vision for sustainable design. Several clients shifted uncomfortably in their seats, probably reconsidering their business relationships with a firm that employed people capable of such systematic deception. Municipal officials who'd been considering major contracts exchanged meaningful glances, their confidence in Davidson and Associates' ethical standards clearly shaken. Kenneth looked directly at me for the first time since I'd entered the room, his expression showing shock, humiliation, and something that might have been belated recognition of just how seriously he'd underestimated the woman he'd married. The confident architect who'd been commanding the room minutes earlier now stood frozen, clutching legal documents that detailed his professional and personal misconduct for everyone to see. Robert Chin wasn't finished. He turned to Angela with the efficiency of someone who'd performed this routine hundreds of times in various corporate settings. "Angela Davidson," he announced, "you've been served." Angela's carefully constructed corporate image dissolved as she received her own manila envelope containing conspiracy charges, ethics violations, and detailed allegations of abuse of executive power. Her face went pale as she realized that her secret relationship with Kenneth had been documented, analyzed, and was now being exposed to the firm's biggest clients and most important business partners. The legal papers detailed her violation of company policies requiring disclosure of supervisor-subordinate relationships, her use of corporate resources for personal activities, and her participation in Kenneth's plan to defraud his marriage using funds that had been earned through my artistic work. The room's energy shifted from professional presentation to scandalized fascination as Davidson and Associates' biggest clients witnessed their executive leadership team's personal and professional misconduct being exposed simultaneously. These were people who managed million-dollar construction contracts and municipal planning budgets. They understood the implications of ethics violations and corporate liability better than most. Angela tried to maintain her composure, but her hands shook as she scanned the legal documents. The confident executive who'd been supporting Kenneth's presentation moments earlier now looked like someone who'd just realized her career was ending in the most public and humiliating way possible. The conference room remained frozen in shocked silence, 70 witnesses to the spectacular implosion of two people who'd thought they were too smart, too careful, and too powerful to face consequences for their choices. But consequences, as Kenneth and Angela were learning, don't care how clever you think you are. They only care about evidence, timing, and justice delivered with precision. The silence in Davidson and Associates' conference room stretched for what felt like an eternity. 70 witnesses frozen in the aftermath of a public humiliation that would be discussed in corporate circles for years to come. I turned and walked toward the exit with measured steps, leaving Kenneth and Angela to face the professional consequences of their personal choices. 4 months later, the legal victory felt both satisfying and anticlimactic. Victoria's strategy had succeeded beyond even her optimistic projections. Kenneth left our marriage with exactly what he'd brought into it: his personal belongings, his architectural degree, and a reputation so damaged that finding equivalent employment would require relocating to a different state. The divorce decree awarded me complete ownership of our cottage, all financial assets, and Kenneth's portion of retirement investments as compensation for his systematic theft of marital resources. Rarely have I seen someone document their own destruction so thoroughly, Victoria observed during our final meeting in her office overlooking the city. The same windows that had intimidated me months earlier now felt like symbols of hard-won victory. Kenneth's emails and recorded conversations created an airtight case for financial fraud that most prosecutors would envy. The civil suit against Kenneth and Angela had yielded substantial damages: $12,700 covering emotional distress, punitive damages for financial fraud, and restitution for the money Kenneth had stolen from our joint accounts to fund his affair. Angela's portion came largely from her forced resignation from Davidson and Associates, where the firm's board had terminated her within 48 hours of our public confrontation. Davidson and Associates settled their portion immediately, Victoria explained, sliding final settlement documents across her mahogany desk. Architecture firms protect their reputations obsessively. 2 senior employees violating ethics policies while exposing the company to sexual harassment liability was unacceptable risk. The firm had quietly paid an additional $75,000 to avoid publicity about their executives' misconduct. Kenneth's architectural career in the region was effectively over. No reputable firm would hire someone whose professional judgment had been so spectacularly compromised by personal choices. News of my divorce proceedings had spread through our community with surprising speed. But instead of gossip and sympathy, I encountered respect and admiration. Parents of my piano students began referring friends and neighbors, impressed by what they perceived as remarkable strength during difficult circumstances. Mrs. Walsh showed incredible grace throughout that entire situation, Martha Henderson told her bridge club, according to her daughter Sarah, one of my advanced students. She never said a negative word about her husband, just focused on her music and her students. That takes real character. My teaching schedule expanded from 12 students to 23 within 3 months. Wedding bookings increased as couples heard about my composure during personal crisis and trusted me to handle their special days with similar professionalism. The settlement money allowed me to renovate the cottage's sunroom into a proper music studio with acoustic panels, professional lighting, and a stunning grand piano that had previously been beyond my budget. The studio overlooked Moonrise Bay through floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the changing seasons like living artwork. Students often commented on the inspiring atmosphere, saying the space itself seemed to enhance their musical understanding. My own compositions flowed with emotional depth I'd never accessed before. Pieces that reflected survival, transformation, and hard-won wisdom rather than naive romantic idealism. Local venues began requesting original compositions for special events. The Lighthouse Restaurant commissioned a piece for their anniversary celebration. The community theater asked me to compose background music for their spring production. What had started as personal healing through music was evolving into artistic recognition I'd never expected. The cottage transformation occurred gradually, room by room, as I replaced shared memories with personal choices. Kenneth's masculine influence disappeared as I painted walls in colors that reflected my artistic sensibilities rather than neutral compromises. The kitchen became bright yellow with herb gardens on every windowsill. The living room featured a reading corner with built-in bookshelves and a window seat overlooking the harbor. I created what I called my truth box, a handcrafted wooden container where I kept items representing authentic accomplishments and genuine relationships. My piano teaching certificate, thank you cards from wedding couples, photos with real friends who'd supported me during the divorce, Victoria's business card as a reminder of standing up for myself. The truth box also contained a letter from Sophie Martinez, who'd written to express admiration for my courage in pursuing justice despite potential embarrassment. Watching you handle that situation with such dignity reminded me why I contacted you in the first place. Sophie had written, "Women like you make the world safer for all of us." Each item in the truth box represented moments when I'd chosen authenticity over convenience, truth over comfortable lies. The collection grew slowly but steadily, documenting my journey from naive trust to earned wisdom. Spring brought unexpected connection in the form of James Morrison, the owner of Harbor Books, a cozy independent bookstore 3 blocks from the cottage. Our meeting was refreshingly ordinary. I was browsing poetry collections when he recommended Mary Oliver's latest volume, leading to a conversation about how literature influenced musical composition. "I've always wondered about the relationship between written rhythm and musical rhythm," James said, his genuine curiosity evident in the way he listened to my responses. "Do you hear melodies when you read certain poets?" James was 42, divorced for 3 years, with silver threading through dark hair and laugh lines that suggested someone who found joy in everyday moments. He'd purchased Harbor Books after leaving a corporate finance career that had left him feeling spiritually empty. Our conversations flowed naturally, covering literature, music, local history, and shared appreciation for authentic craftsmanship over mass-produced convenience. "I admire people who create beautiful things," James said during one of our coffee conversations at the bookstore's reading corner. "Your music, my book recommendations, we're both trying to connect people with experiences that matter." His genuine interest in my compositions felt revolutionary after years of Kenneth's polite tolerance for my artistic hobby. James asked thoughtful questions about musical structure, attended my student recital without being asked, and never once suggested that my creative work was less important than more traditionally lucrative careers. Kenneth's betrayal had taught me to distinguish between authentic emotions and performed sentiments, between genuine partnership and strategic manipulation. I now trusted my instincts about people's motivations rather than accepting surface presentations that seemed too perfect or convenient. The experience revealed strength and strategic capabilities I'd underestimated while focusing on being a supportive wife. Managing the divorce proceedings, coordinating with attorneys and forensic accountants, and executing a complex legal strategy had demonstrated talents I'd never recognized or developed. I wasn't just Kenneth's artistic wife. I was a capable woman with valuable skills who'd been playing a diminished version of herself. "I only compose authentic melodies" became my guiding philosophy, applying to relationships, professional opportunities, and personal choices. Every decision was filtered through questions about genuine value versus superficial appeal, long-term authenticity versus short-term convenience. James embodied this philosophy in ways Kenneth never had. His appreciation for my music felt genuine rather than obligatory. His bookstore reflected personal passion rather than profitable trends. His conversation engaged with ideas rather than impressing audiences. 6 months after Kenneth's public humiliation, I performed an original composition at the community center's annual arts festival. The piece, titled Moonrise Bay Morning, captured the feeling of watching sunrise from my studio windows while knowing that the day belonged entirely to me. In the audience, James listened with the focus of someone who understood that music could tell stories words couldn't capture. Several rows behind him, Martha Henderson and other parents of my students applauded with pride for someone they'd watched transform crisis into opportunity. Kenneth was notably absent, having relocated to a different state where his reputation hadn't preceded him. Angela had taken a position with a small firm in another region, her executive career permanently derailed by choices that had prioritized short-term desire over long-term wisdom. But their absence felt appropriate rather than sad. My life now contained only authentic melodies, genuine relationships, and the kind of peace that comes from knowing that every note was composed by someone who refused to settle for anything less than truth. The girl who'd once made a handcrafted portfolio for a lying husband had become a woman who created beauty on her own terms, surrounded by people who appreciated authenticity over convenience and substance over performance. This was what victory looked like, not just winning a legal battle, but discovering who you really are when no one else is writing your story.